Beep, 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 beep. The Morning Minute with Mr. Sheen and Mr. Wills.
Hi,
Oh, hello everyone.
welcome. So I'm Mr. Wills.
This is Mr. Sheehan, and you're here for a special APS production.
So today we're here to talk about addressing the stress. So we've been talking about it for the past couple of weeks now, and today what we're going to do is actually give you some practical information. We're going to talk about actually what happens in our brain when we get stressed, and actually how to overcome that.
So, to get this whole party started, we're going to watch a video by a YouTube vlogger named Josh Sunquest. Here goes nothing.
What's up, YouTube? So I recently read a study where they looked at the amount of stress that people experienced in their life, and they found that teenagers reported experiencing a significantly greater degree of severe stress than did adults. And a lot of adults questioned this study because they said, how could teenagers experience more stress than us? Because they don't have any financial responsibilities and they have their whole life in front of them. But to me, this study made a lot of sense because yes, although teenagers might experience less financial responsibility than do adults, one of the major factors of stress for human beings is the degree of control that they feel over their lives. And if you look at teenagers versus the rest of their lives as adults, being a teenager is the time in your life when you will experience the least amount of control over your life. Let's look at the 5 biggest decisions of your life and how as a teenager you have almost no control over any of them. Number 1, you have very little control over who you hang out with because those things are largely determined by where you live and what school you go to. And you might have parents who try to outlaw you from hanging out with certain groups of people. For example, maybe you want to date a Capulet, but your parents are super Montague and they're all like, I'm not going to let you date that person except I'm going to talk in iambic pentameter and you're not going to understand any of the things I'm saying to you. Number 2, you can't control who you live with because this is generally based on who your parents marry and how many babies they have. I mean, unless your parents are coming to you like, hey, do you think we should have more babies? In which case you're probably like, whoa, way too much information and do not want to be involved in this discussion at all. Number 3, what you do with your time. As a teenager, you are required by law to be in school for certain hours per day, and then your teachers give you homework that you have no control over how much there is, and then your favorite YouTube creators create content and you must watch it, and if you're into daily vloggers, then you get behind after a couple days of doing homework, and then you're like, oh my gosh, I've got hours of YouTube to catch up on. Number 4, where you go. And the little free time that you do have, you have limited options as to where you go during that time because of the big 3 C's. Number 1, the curfew that your parents or city establishes for you. Number 2, the city that you live in doesn't have public transportation options for you as a teenager for getting around. And number 3, related to that, is the car that you may or may not have access to, or whether you are even old enough to have a driver's license. Number 5, where you live. This can be really tough, especially if you live in a small town where there's just not a lot of stuff to do. Or maybe you want to find a boyfriend or girlfriend, but there's only like 10 potential people you could date at your school and they're already dating someone. And so you have to decide between being single or dating your cousin. So those are some of the reasons that I think that being a teenager is in fact very stressful. It is extremely simple to solve all of these problems. All you have to do is wait a couple of years and there is a 100% chance that you will no longer be a teenager.
Thanks, Josh. So that video, we were talking all about kind of the loss of control that's part of being a teenager. But you know, that's really not that really inspiring when we think about it. If you really just like are getting through the day-to-day, it's not that fun. So seniors, right now, you're actually getting to choose all of these things. He talks about these 3 C's: city, curfew, and car. College is one of those things where for the first time in your life, you get to choose all of those things, or at least, you know, choose the college that like fits that mold. But you know, for everybody else, 3 years might be a long time to wait to really gain that control back again. Our whole goal with this video today, and really with the whole year, is to give you strategies to take back the things that are in your actual control and rework them to make your life better.
So I think it's really important to recognize that the general high school experience hasn't really changed that much. All of the teachers in this building have been through high school. We've done it. We went and did the tests. We had all of the quizzes and the SATs and the essays and all of these things. But it's really essential to understand that the conditions surrounding a high school experience now are drastically different. So what do you think the biggest change in the high school experience is between like when we were in high school and like what our students have today?
Social media, number 1.
What a part of social media do you think changes, or how the social media do you think change the high school experience?
I think really what we're talking about here with social media is that you're kind of required to be a part of social media now. It's not like you can just check your email and those sorts of things. It's like you're in all of these different networks all the time. Right. And everybody else is on them all of the time.
Right, and there's so many of them.
Let's think about it. I have an Instagram account, I have a Twitter, I have a Facebook.
Don't forget LinkedIn.
LinkedIn. One of the areas I can control is my social media, right? I am in complete control of that. But it's like this dual-edged sword. I control it, but it also controls me, because it's not just me that I'm thinking about, it's all of the rest of my network.
It's something that you see and really can't escape from, right? Like
Right.
you get it, what you think is a text message, or you get this notification, and then there you have this ability to see and be connected to so many different things. When we were in high school, the day would end and the day would end. You go home, you do your work, you go to sports, or whatever. But now there's this requirement, this kind of social requirement to always be around and always be connected.
I'm not just worried anymore about like what maybe the weird thing I said during the day was. Now I'm going home and I'm thinking about like, oh, well, this tweet that I sent out, maybe somebody thinks it's about them. Really has nothing to do with them at all. I was just nervous. And social media is work.
Yeah.
I mean, now we talk about it and we talk about brand identity. We're so familiar with what these companies are doing that we function as like companies ourselves. I have to think about like, well, I took this picture. Does it really fit the image that I want to portray of myself? If I post that on Instagram and don't put the right filter on it, it might not make sense for me anymore. What I think that all of my followers are like thinking that I should be posting. I'm not only just working at school, but I'm working at cultivating this like perfect idea of what my identity should be like. At a time also where I'm really just supposed to be figuring out who I am. So one of the things we've been talking about is the idea of maximizing your education.
I think a lot has changed, since when we graduated and what has happened in the pressures in high school. I'm now thinking, what am I going to do after I graduate?
Right.
I either have to go to grad school, I have to get a job, because I'm going to have this enormous loan or this enormous amount of money has just been spent on me.
Yeah.
And I have to maximize that opportunity to become something, maybe not that I want, but what I'm supposed to be. After the financial crisis of 2008, this idea of like getting the most bang for your buck in terms of like where you're going to go to school and how much it's going to cost and what kind of job am I going to get? These are kinds of the questions that, at least in my high school experience, like were not really part of the rhetoric or part of the decisions or the decision-making process behind like, where am I going to attend school? I went to a school because I liked it. I went and studied the things that I wanted to study because I liked it.
And let's be honest here, we have 2 degrees that are like kind of ridiculous.
Yeah, but it was because I followed a passion, I followed an interest. And that is becoming less and less feasible and less like possible now.
And I think that has a trickle-down effect too, because it's like, I'm thinking about this in college, but I also am now doing all of these things to get me into that college.
Right. When I asked that question, okay, why do you gotta put yourself in these positions now so I can get into a good college?
Right.
Okay, then what happens? Okay, I gotta get a good job. Then what happens? I need to be able to make all of this money so I can ultimately, the end of the day always is so I can be happy.
Right.
And I think that we postpone our own joy or postpone our own happiness as something that goes well off into the future. I think that that's a really, like, it's just like really not that good. To do some things in your life presently to like not postpone joy and happiness, but to like experience it in the moment.
Right.
Is going to be an enormous way to battle stress.
Yeah.
Because if I'm only living for this expectation of the next thing, I'm not paying attention to what needs to happen right now.
Whew. Mr. Wills and I have been talking a lot. So we're going to take a quick breather, and we're going to send you over to our friend and author, Kelly McGonigal, and take a look at her TED Talk.
I have a confession to make. But first, I want you to make a little confession to me. In the past year, I want you to just raise your hand if you've experienced relatively little stress. Anyone? How about a moderate amount of stress? Who's experienced a lot of stress? Yeah, me too. But that is not my confession. My confession is this. I am a health psychologist, and my mission is to help people be happier and healthier. But I fear that something I've been teaching for the last 10 years is doing more harm than good. And it has to do with stress. For years, I've been telling people stress makes you sick. It increases the risk of everything from the common cold to cardiovascular disease. Basically, I've turned stress into the enemy. But I've changed my mind about stress. And today, I want to change yours. Let me start with the study that made me rethink my whole approach to stress. This study tracked 30,000 adults in the United States for 8 years. And they started by asking people, how much stress have you experienced in the last year? They also asked, do you believe that stress is harmful for your health? And then they used public death records to find out who died. Okay, some bad news first. People who experienced a lot of stress in the previous year had a 43% increased risk of dying. But that was only true for the people who also believed that stress is harmful for your health. People who experienced a lot of stress but did not view stress as harmful were no more likely to die. In fact, they had the lowest risk of dying of anyone in the study, including people who had relatively little stress. So this study got me wondering, can changing how you think about stress make you healthier? And here the science says yes. When you change your mind about stress, you can change your body's response to stress.
Thanks for the science, Kel. Dr. McGonigal in her TED Talk talked about the relationship between death and stress, but stress actually also causes a lot of other things too. Studies show that a high level of stress can lead to migraines, can lead to insomnia, and a whole slew of other things that we just really wouldn't want for ourselves. So one of the ways that we can try to approach that is by understanding the 4 different kinds of responses we have to stress. The first response that we're going to talk about is the fight or flight stress response. This is the one that most people are familiar with. It's the most common one that people refer to. However, it's only supposed to be used in life or death situations. Chances are your 4th period test, not a life or death situation. So in the fight or flight response, our body does all sorts of things to get us ready for either the fight or the flight. We have an increased blood flow, so we can have oxygen moving to all of our muscles so we can run or fight better. Our pituitary gland sends out adrenaline and sends out other hormones to kind of get us ready for this fight or this flight. And the body responds to that. Okay, we get sweaty, our pupils dilate. We get this kind of nervous energy that requires us to move and to have some sort of physical action. Now, obviously, if you find yourself in a situation that is life or death, it's really good that your body does all these things. But if this is your only stress responder, it's going to put an enormous amount of pressure on your sympathetic nervous system and can cause all sorts of damage. When a person has a fight or flight response under the pressure to perform, psychologists call this a threat response. Pressure to perform could be that 4th period test or a game later in the day. A threat response is one that primes you more for self-defense than success. During a threat response, your emotions will likely include fear, anger, self-doubt, and shame. Our goal here is to create a mindset shift and take that threat response and turn it into something called a challenge response. Like a fight or flight response, the challenge response gives you energy and helps you perform under pressure. Your heart rate still rises, your adrenaline still spikes, but you become focused, not fearful. The result is increased confidence, enhanced concentration, and peak performance. People are more likely to have a challenge response when they focus on their resources. An easy way to do this is acknowledging your own personal strengths, thinking about how you've prepared for this particular challenge, and remembering times in the past when you overcame similar obstacles. These are all quick mindset shifts that can turn any threat into a challenge. I think if I'm going to go from personal experience, one of the best examples of a challenge response comes from the time that I spent playing football. If you have a really big game at the end of the season, it's going to bring about a lot of nerves and a lot of stress. But if you approach it with a challenge mindset, it's going to give you a better result. Recognize your own strengths. We're in the championship game. We're obviously a very good team, and we're here for a reason. You look at all of the preparation that has put you in that position. We've already done all of the practice. We've already done all the preseason workouts. Again, we're there for a reason. Envisioning different places in the past where you've utilized this. By focusing on those things, you really can maximize your potential. It's going to make you perform better.
Okay, 2 responses left. Tend and befriend and defeat. The first one, defeat. It's the one we never want to happen. The defeat response is a biologically hardwired response to repeated threats. Thinking about school, this could be constant homework, multiple tests per week, or even just a genuinely packed schedule. Its main effect is that you withdraw and lose motivation and hope. This response only really kicks in when you feel like you've been beaten by your circumstances. Therefore, we need a counter instinct that kicks in when we start to despair to keep us engaged when things start to seem hopeless. That's the tend and befriend response. The tend and befriend response motivates you to protect the people and the community that you care about. Most importantly, it gives you the courage to do so. This is the response that encourages you to seek support. What happens in this response is that your brain releases the hormone oxytocin. Its primary function is to strengthen social bonds. It enhances your empathy and intuition, and also makes you more brave. The 10 friend mindset shift happens by focusing on bigger than self goals, supporting others, and choosing to see stress as part of the common human experience. Okay, so for example, one time that I've used the 10 friend response is I had this lesson last week that just did not go the way that I wanted to. Technology didn't work, my PowerPoint wasn't functioning right. So instead of like actually falling into the defeat response where I could have gone home and just been like, oh my gosh, what did I do today? I could actually go and talk to one of my friends. But here, what I'm not really doing is I'm not just complaining to air my grievances. What I'm actually doing is to look for support and find an empathetic way of interacting with the people around me.
All right, as a quick recap, we got 4 different stress responses that we went through today. Fight or flight, really only necessary when you're getting chased by a large animal that wants to eat you. Number 2 would be a challenge response. In a challenge response, you focus on your strengths and some of the things that you have done in the past to help overcome that stressor.
2 more responses. The defeat response, only really used as a last resort. 10 friend, that's where we...
Oh, let me help you out there, Mr. Lewis. Seek the help of others to help overcome our stressors.
There we go. So those are our 4 stress responses. Okay, so we're gonna close out our video now with 25 different ways that you can actually reduce your stress in your life. Countdown clock on.
25 different things you could do to de-stress yourself.
Number 1, yoga.
Number 2, listen to music.
Number 3, breathing exercises.
Number 4, work out.
Number 5, drink a cup of tea.
Number 6, pet a dog.
7, call your mom.
Number 8, read a book.
9, walk in the park.
Number 10, do some yard work.
11, doodle.
12, meditate.
13, pray.
14, take a nap.
15, hug a friend.
16, go on a high-fiving spree.
17, start a gratitude revolution.
18, write about it.
19, throw a dance party.
20, play an instrument.
21, make a sandwich.
22, take a break.
23, get your friends together.
24, go to movies.
25, cook something new.
This is just 25 things that you could do to de-stress. Some of them might work for you, some of them might not. But what's important is that you set aside time to relieve your stress.